Hey, welcome to Mike's Trains and thanks for joining me for another video. In this video we're going to continue along with the train yard and train station scenery stuff for the yard. Now we've done the fuel station in the past areas. I have the maintenance area done. Now I want to turn my attention to this area right here. And in that area there, what I want to do is I want this to be like a either concrete or paved, probably concrete pad across all of these tracks all the way around the front here. So in order to do that, I'm going to use styrene plastic, and let me just show you how I'm coming up with the dimensions to cut this, because everything's at an angle, and I just thought it would be good to start with that. What I have is a piece of notebook paper here, and all I did was to tape the notebook paper right over the tracks like this. Match this up to what I've got going on here like that. Alright, so that it goes over the front edge and it obviously goes back behind everything, and then I pressed onto the notebook paper. I taped all this down with like painter's tape, and then I pressed down and I creased the paper over all the track so that I know where the rails are going to lie in here. And then you can see I drew lines over the creases, and then you come over to this side and I have the same thing. And then I went upstairs to the desk and I cut the pieces out between the lines, and that gives me my angles to go between the tracks over there. So why don't we go upstairs and take a look at that and what we're using to cover all this with. Okay, so we're on the desk now, back upstairs, and I have my piece of paper here that I drew I made the creases in the paper to mark the rails. So then I came up and I got my ruler out and I drew lines down the creases so that I know I can see easily where the rails lie. Then I took my X-Acto knife and my ruler like this, and I cut out the pieces. So now I have, and I numbered them beforehand so I know which track they go to, which space. So I have a number 1 and a number 2. So then I'm left with this. This is the gap in between the sets of rails. Now I know it fits because I went down and checked it, and I actually made them just a shade bigger than what I need, just in case there's any inconsistencies in the rails themselves, because they didn't use flex track for that. I didn't use straight track because that's all I had at the time. So I did make them a little bit bigger so I can sand them and I can contour them if I need to. At that point I pulled out, I have sheets of this 40 thousandths thick styrene, and I brought this down and I set it up to the rails, okay, because I want to know the thickness and how high I can go up to the rail. Now this 40 thousandths is just short of dead even to the top of the rail, and I'd like it to be a little bit lower than the rail heads for two reasons. The first reason is I don't want anything on the locomotives getting caught up on the styrene here, and number 2 is when I go to clean the rails, I'm not going to scrape off all the finish that I put on the styrene by cleaning it, because if you make it exactly the same height, you're gonna end up scrubbing off all your paint and weathering and everything else you put on there. So the rail heads need to be just a touch higher than the styrene here. So then what I did was, this was actually a much longer piece, okay. What I did was I put the pieces on the styrene like this, and I set them up on here, one on this side and one on this side. like this, and I put them even to the outside and tight to the bottom, but not so much as to overhang on both of these. And then I mark them. These probably actually go this way. Yeah. So then I mark them. I mark the top of each paper, put a small pencil mark here and another one down on the bottom, pull this off, and I draw a line and connect them. Same on this side. Draw a line and connect them. So now, as you can see, these are shorter than the styrene, and that's fine. That's okay. I want to make sure that this end is where it needs to be, and there's got to be a small angle on this end to match the curve in the turntable. The back end, I can mark that off afterwards and cut that off where I need it. I'm not too worried about the back end now. If it hangs out, it hangs out. We'll deal with that at the end. So now I'm at this point here. So you're caught up to where I am. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this on here, and I'm going to use a nice straight edge, and I'm going to cut these two pieces off. So these are the two sections of track. So you have a track section goes through here, one here, and one here, and these will be together like this. Alright. And then the only other piece that needs to get cut is the one that's going to go between the rails, up the center, between the two rails, which is basically this piece right here. So what I can do with that piece in the center is just measure this out and probably cut it off about a 1/16 or maybe an 1/8 inch smaller than this is, because you want this centerpiece to lie between the spike head details in the rails, and then that'll sit nice and flat and be just below surface like everything else. So now the next thing to do is to go downstairs again, test fit these. Now once these fit and we're all good, then we can take a little bit of, I'm actually not going to use, you know, CA glue. I'm not going to use anything heavy duty like that. I'm just going to put a little bit of caulk on the bottom, and I'm just going to let them sit, drop them, and just firm press them right into the caulk and let that hold it in place. That way if I have issues with it later and I need to pull them up, I can pull them up easily, and it's not going to destroy the tracks. I'm not attaching these actually to the rails at all, but it'll look attached, and the same with this one. And then for the rest of the track around the whole front of the roundhouse, the same process will apply. We'll lay this on top, press down to get the impressions of the tracks, and then same as we did here, number them, draw the lines, and then cut out these as a template, transfer it to styrene, cut them out, and go put them in. So let me get these two pieces to fit, and we'll go down and we'll take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so we're back down on the layout. I have my two pieces here, number 1 and number 2, and we're going to add these in here. So this one goes right in here like this, and it does what I expected it to do. It overhangs the rail on this track. When I put it flush to this side, it overhangs just a touch on this track. And then we've got track number 2, or gap number 2. And this one does pretty much the same thing. And there's actually a small curve in the back. I don't know if it shows on there. But part of the problem is when you're looking in here, I have solder joints. I have one right here, one right here. There's one on each of these so that the tracks are powered. I have one right here, here, and here. These need to be, the plastic needs to be, the styrene needs to be cut out in those areas so that this will drop in between the rails and actually drop below the track surface. So this is what we're going to end up with. Now what I also want to do is I want to bring this front edge on one side all the way out flush to the edge of the turntable. Okay, right to the edge of the turntable, and then I'm going to mark this side, and I have a small mark. So what I end up with is a small tick mark here, and then I'll take my straight edge and we'll cut it straight right to this corner here, straight across. And then the other one already has, I've already done the same thing here, so from this line right into the corner, and that will line us straight up with the edges of the turntable. Now the only other thing I want to do at this point is mark where my solder joints are so that I can cut out for the joints that go right below it. I just want to mark where they are. And those are our two solder joints on this piece. Okay, so now it's back upstairs again. Okay, so back up on the desk again. The first thing I want to do is I want to clip off the tick marks on the end and get those cut where they need to be. Like that. And then these ends can all be fine-tuned later on with either a file or some sandpaper. The next thing I want to do is I want to notch out for these solder joints in here. Is I'm going to take a Dremel bit and I'm going to cut this with, sand it with the Dremel bit. It'll go much quicker and I can be done with this. Okay, so we've got all those cut out. Now I'm just going to smooth it a little bit with the file. So that's all pretty good. Now the next thing I want to do, one more thing, and this happens when you cut the styrene. There's not much, at least I found, that you can do about it, is when you cut it with a knife, like I've been doing, what happens is one of the edges of this gets raised up. The knife just does this. So I take a flat blade like this and we just run it. Alright, so there's our two pieces. We're all notched for the solder joints. We have nice flat edge up on the tops, on the sides. Now it's just a matter, now the time is we could bring the sandpaper downstairs and we'll sand the edges until this fits exactly into the, drops into the spaces between the tracks where they're supposed to go. We need these to drop absolutely flat in there. You don't want them tipped up one way or the other, or have, you know, lumps inside of there, that kind of thing. You want these to sit nice, real flat. So that's going to be the next step, is to, like I said, to bring the sandpaper downstairs. We'll sand the edges. You should only need to do one side to get these to drop down in. You shouldn't have to sand both sides. And then once these are down and in there, then we'll pull them out one last time, and I'm going to spray these and weather them before they go in. It's just easier. I don't want to be doing the weathering on the layout. I'm going to get this all weathered and finished, and then we'll bring them downstairs and glue them into place. So these will all go through the spray booth, and what'll happen is I'll cut all of them, all the little spaces and gaps, you know, all the way around the turntable, and get them all cut just like this. And And once they're all cut, and I have, I don't know how many of these going to be, like maybe 8 or 9 of them, all different lengths, different widths. They're all going to be different. Once I get them all cut out and they all fit in there like they're supposed to, I'll bring them all up here, throw them in the spray booth, spray them all down, bring them over to here, weather them, and then bring them back down for the final fit and install. So there's a lot to do still, but this is the beginning process of how we're going to get that done. Hopefully for the next video I can show you what that's going to look like all in place. And then as well as that is I have to cut the pieces that go between the rails down the center. Those also have to be cut and weathered as well. So I got my work cut out for me. You can see the process of what I'm going through to get this done. The end result should be fantastic. I think it's going to look really good. So anyway, I think that's it for this week. If you haven't seen me before, please subscribe. I'd love to have you along for the ride. Always good to have new people watching. So anyway, until next time, happy modeling.